Good morning. Today's March 24th, 2013. My little boy's running around. It's 2. And my wife's doing some work in the kitchen. I watched a Billy Joel video today on YouTube. It was a duet with his father. Brings to mind the phrase, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Why do I say that? Over and over again, I see that the world-class musicians and the top creators come from musical backgrounds. Over and over you see that there's typically it's a father who was an excellent musician, semi-pro, and the son becomes world-class. So my theory through inductive reasoning is that world-class musicianship is a multi-generational proposition. It's a 2-generational proposition at least. I've read so many biographies, and over you'll find that it's the same thing. Now, why is that? Well, for one thing, imagine yourself trying to compete with somebody who was hearing good music in the womb and began to experience instruments from the time that he or she could move. My son is an example of these things. There's a piano in the living room, there's guitars hanging on the walls, mandolin, and furthermore, every time he does something musical, my wife and I praise him and encourage him. And sing along with little sounds that he makes to really encourage him. Another thought that I had this morning about the value of being the second in this multi-generational process, being the second generation, is that for this person, typically this son and this daughter, technique is a given. My son, I imagine, will play music as if it's breathing air, because he's never known a non-musical home. He's never known a life where somebody isn't playing an instrument, or where he couldn't touch something and make a sound. So I imagine that when he's 20 years old, he'll have all the technique that I have and more, and his mind will be free to totally devote to the creative side. Creative side of music, and even beyond just music. I mean, because the music will be a given. He'll just be free to express himself, to respond to his world, to use music to do that. Music will be a tool that's given for him to to use however he wishes. Whereas for most of us first generation musicians, much of our time has been spent and continues to be spent thinking about thinking about getting the building blocks right, thinking about how they can be used together in ways that would just be so taken for granted for somebody who was born into it. And if such a person born into it wants to spend their time thinking about doing things with the music itself, wow, that the things that will push that person's cognitive abilities to their limits are going to be stellar. So anyway, these are some of my ideas about how we account for world-class musicians. World-class musicians who creates. Or maybe I should say world-class creators. I do notice the difference between a lot of musicians and great creators. I've heard some guitarists, for example, I don't want to name names because I don't want to be critical of particular people, but you probably all know of at least one guitarist who's fantastic on someone else's album, and yet on his own album, that the technique is there, but the creative impulse isn't there. I'm thinking of Steely Dan in particular. You can the album Asia is a prime example. Is just so fantastic. The creativity involved in that is so fantastic, and what Fagen and Becker are able to bring out in all the players that they use is just amazing. But if you go and listen to those players on their own albums, I think you may find that what they're doing is just not as inspiring as what Fagen and Becker are able to bring out of them. And so that's an example of what I mean by the difference between creativity, creative playing, and merely technical playing. Well, have a great day, and I'll chat with you next time.